Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with Conspicuous. Today, we are joined by Conaill, who is the Citizen Digital Manager at SSE Renewables. So, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to have you on. Quite excited for this chat, to be fair.
Thanks very much. Well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come and speak.
No worries, no worries. So, obviously, I think this one's going to be a really interesting chat because SSE, as we know, is a very large enterprise company, and I'm very excited to hear your views and thoughts in this area. Now, for those that don't know about you, where you've come from, what that background into being Conaill, the Citizen Digital Manager at SSE, let's talk everyone through that journey of yours.
Sounds good. Okay, so where to start? I guess today I am, the Citizen Digital Manager at SSE Renewables, who are a sort of large-scale renewable energy company, part of a larger energy group called SSE. But my journey's been an interesting one to land up in this position. So let's go way back. I started with a maths degree, so I was very sort of analytical, technical, and moved into the renewable sector. So I've come from a renewable background. So I did a PhD in wind turbine design, covering things like aerodynamics and control systems. And that led me on to a job in this sort of like halfway house between industry and research and academia in a company called the ORE Catapult. So for 7 years, I was in this offshore wind sort of innovation accelerator company for 7 years. And that it was those 7 years where I sort of made the transition away from core engineering in the renewable space into data and digital. I saw this opportunity that there's a lot of innovation possible and required in the renewable sector. So I sort of built up a data and digital team in this innovation company for 7 years. And I'd been working with all the big major renewable energy players as a sort of collaboration support and innovation support team. But 5 years ago, I took the chance to move into SSE Renewables, one of the big players in the renewable energy space. And the reason I moved across is they were starting a new digital team for the SSE Renewables business unit. So I took that experience I built up for 7 years of really getting into data and digital for renewables and brought that into the SSE Renewables organization. But I started as a sort of generic data engineer, looking to find my place in this sort of quite, project management and engineering heavy company. So just, SSE Renewables, we develop and then own and operate renewable sites. It's typically large scale industrial scale. So wind farms, hydro stations, we're getting into solar and battery now as well. And it's, it's utility scale. So, we've got thousands of turbines around the UK, something like 70 hydro stations. It's very, very big scale here. And yeah, for 5 years now, I've been in this digital team at SSE Renewables. And throughout those 5 years, I have really honed in on the power platform. I can see the impact it can have at an enterprise scale. So I came in with some more generic skills, a bit of like database management and software development and coding and a bit of cloud. But what I've really done for the last 4 or 5 years now is really open my eyes to the opportunity of upskilling people in an enterprise business, showing them that they can solve their own problems with something like Power Platform. So the job title that I have now, Citizen Digital Manager, is because I've created a sort of sub team within the digital team. The sub team I run is the Citizen Digital team, and one of our main remits is to upskill people, teach them how to get away from spreadsheets and start building apps and dashboards and automate things with flows. So that's where the name really comes from, Citizen Digital. And I think I'm well placed because I've come from the renewable sector. So I know the sorts of problems they're trying to solve, but I've had all this experience now in sort of core IT type areas and processes. So I can blend those together. So now I've got a small team and we do all that digital training stuff, but we also build enterprise scale apps with the Power Platform. Large apps with 900 plus users, business critical processes depend on these apps. So there's two sides to this story. I'm sure we'll get into. There's the citizen upskilling, but then also the fact that Power Platform is reliable for enterprise scale apps.
Absolutely. And I think It's amazing how all your experiences really ties into each other. So knowing your background and where you've got to today is really fascinating. Out of curiosity, when you joined SSE Renewables, was Power Platform already implemented, or was it something that you sort of brought in when you joined?
That is a good question. It was available and it was there, but it was a bit of a wild west. And it was very
Right,
early stages. There's a few pilot projects. Nobody in the renewables business had really grasped the opportunity, taken it by the horns, and done something big with it. It was there. If you wanted to build a Power BI dashboard, you could get Power BI. It was an interesting time. You had to sit in a panel and request it and make sure you're going to do something useful. Well, I think we've really transformed the business now. There's a lot more trust that comes with making sure governance is baked in, but now we really can trust users and train users to go and build their own problems, build their own solutions to solve their own problems. So yeah, to answer your question, it was there, but it was kind of a bit loosely defined and loosely governed. And with
yeah,
the support of a centralized IT team for the SSE group, that group, the SSE Renewables business unit, that's what I'm responsible for. We've started to work very closely with them to make sure their policies are adhered to, and now we're really scaling up. We're seeing all kinds of apps and flows and dashboards, and of course getting into the more recent developments like Power Pages and agents and all that good stuff. So it's really happening, but it's underpinned by solid governance so that at this scale, we're lucky that we can have we can experiment, we can try the new features, but for something to be rolled out across hundreds and hundreds of users, it needs to be trusted and reliable. And yeah, that comes with a solid underpinning of governance. So that's where we've got to the last 5 years, and we're on a growth trajectory. There's loads more we could do with the Power Platform.
that's so exciting because I feel like for me, I get really excited when talking to someone who one is passionate about the industry anyway that they're working within. But obviously there's a big difference between being an end user and a Microsoft partner. Now, if I'm being honest, I end up talking to a lot of people from Microsoft partners every single day. And it's amazing what they do, but it is very much, one project in, get it done, get it out, etc. It is that revolving belt of constant
Mm.
projects. But I love digging into like the end users and they can really take their industry and how they can really tailor it to be so suitable for that area. um I think it takes a lot of brains to do and make it work, but it's, yeah, I
Well,
do find it fascinating.
if I can make an observation, is it brains? I don't know. I think it's more willpower and like longevity. What I've seen. So putting the hat on of like the big enterprise apps, those take a long time. Like we work with Microsoft partners all the time. Like when you're an
Yeah,
organization of this scale, sometimes demand ramps up and you need to bring in some partners. And we've done that.
yeah,
It works really well when there's a sort of missing skill set. So just to give you a bit of a picture here, there's myself as the manager, and I've got a really good developer, someone I hope you interview one day called Jared Simpson, who's like moving into an architect type role, and I've got two more developers, and they're excellent as well. So it's a smallish team for the size of company that we're in, but sometimes we just either have too much demand or there's skill sets we're
yeah,
just missing. So a great example was with one of our very large enterprise apps. We needed to up our dataverse game. We knew some of the basics, but we weren't brilliant with like the security roles, role-based access, and column field-based security. So we brought in someone from a Microsoft Gold partner for a summer, and they just kind of worked with us to do a bit of productionization, really, I would call it. And that was a really good model when you can flex to bring in the right skills, and then for them to upskill my internal team so we can then apply those kind of patterns into other apps. That's the way we've been working, and it's been pretty successful. However, where I think we as an internal team are very valuable to the business is because we stay the course. We just stay with these people. We work alongside the teams. We see how not only we dig into their processes, we start to understand the processes, and then we can work quickly with them. But their processes change all the time. I mean, this is something I'll probably
yeah,
come back to. This idea that the renewable sector is volatile. Things change, like policies change, incentives change, and then we have to refocus. Like one minute you'll be chasing auction bids. The next year we go for corporate power purchase agreements, and our apps need to reflect where the business is focusing and how the processes are changing. So to have an internal team that can work alongside the business and update apps quickly is extremely valuable. And if you depend entirely on partners and contractors, that's an expensive way of working, because the Power Platform brings this flexibility, but you need to have people there to keep tweaking the tools and really commit to a sort of DevOps mindset or a continuous improvement mindset. So yeah, just to kind of summarize there, I guess the real value is working hand in glove with the business, staying with them, staying the
Yeah.
course, especially on those enterprise scale apps. That is a long-term journey, and it's very rare that you create an app and it's done. Like, there will be this ongoing DevOps mindset that needs to be sort of invested in, really.
Absolutely. And I think in terms for that internal team, just having that adaptability, because you're getting it from both ends. As you said, the renewable sector is always evolving, but also tech stacks are always evolving. So it's keeping up with both those areas. Now, I know you've mentioned about building these apps. Obviously, it's not a short-term thing. How long roughly do your enterprise level apps take to build?
Yeah, so it's a good question. One I'm asked a lot by my managers and the business that are coming asking for new apps, and it is case by case. It's always case by case. Some things that can be really, really valuable, really useful, might be really quick. One example is a tool some of the guys in my team built called Translatio, and it's a document translation tool that, Power Apps front end, it brings in a document, sends it off to Azure OpenAI services, cognitive services, does the translation, sends the translation back, and you've got it in your Power Apps environment. So a really nifty tool that uses some of the best, like latest tools in the OpenAI services. That didn't take too long to design and build. That was probably
Right.
one of these sort of 3-4 month efforts, and it was done.
Okay.
But it's extremely valuable, very well used across the business. Huge value statements around, if we were paying a company to translate all those documents, and now we're translating 40, 50 a day on this one app, it's a huge story, but it was quite quick. Whereas other systems, there's these huge sprawling processes, and they're all driven by, emails, spreadsheets, Word documents flying around. So we can see what's possible if you centralize the data with Dataverse and make these user-friendly apps at the front end. If you Power BI dashboards, if you flows, that kind of pattern works for loads of processes across a large enterprise company like ours. So there's some journeys you go on where you might do an early stage MVP, and that could take 3-6 months. But if
Yeah.
you see that drive from the business, and you can see, as I said earlier, this sort of evolution of processes, it's almost like you're always in sort of refinement, design, upgrade phase. So it's a very difficult question. It totally depends on the on the sort of ask coming in, and sometimes it's not just complexity. It's a lot of the time comes down to how mature the process is that you're trying to bake an app into. If people are changing their
Yeah.
mind, then the design could take a long time. Even if the app's quite small at the end, they've not quite decided what they want in the app yet. So I know that's a very waffly way of saying there's no one answer to that. But the
Of
one message I would
course.
say is take care. Like, don't rush designs. That's a false economy. You should spend a good bit of time designing things, making sure there's some wireframes. I always think wireframes are very useful, so end users can see what our vision is kind of looking like, and then move into the build phase.
Okay. And obviously, from so I brought it up on my podcast last week, but more as like a interesting point. But I might ask you the question because you're on the receiving end of it as an end user. Obviously, you're constantly learning and evolving about Power Platform. Now, I was in like a seminar, not a seminar. What are they called?
Like a conference, like
What is it?
a
Like a workshop, yeah, like a
okay.
workshop conference type thing. And there was like a panel, and there was quite a few questions being flung about. But I think the most interesting one I found was when someone said, as an end user, when you're so industry specific, sometimes when you're learning Power Platform and having to implement these apps and do all these projects, sometimes they found it hard with the resources to adapt it to their industry. Have you found that to be a hurdle, or do you find it quite easy to be like, no, this is what we need to do to make it suit the renewable sector?
Well, I find it, I think that's one of the things that my internal team of renewables aligned people that happen to be getting good at Power Platform, that's what we bring to the table.
Yeah,
It's that we kind of are a little bit ahead of the game. We know the processes that people are using. And I have found that the Power Platform is this generic set of like versatile tools that really adapts to any sort of problem that we're seeing in the business. So I haven't struggled at all with this sort of,
that's
that world
good.
of bringing the Power Platform into renewables specifically. It requires a lot of business context, and I think that's what my team bring. So to give you an example,
That's good.
Jared, who's now our architect, he was a civil engineer and became what's called a lead engineer inside SSE Renewables for 10 or 11 years. So that was his world, that he designed new wind farms and new solar
Blimey.
plants, that sort of thing. And in his spare time, he learned Power Platform. So he moved across to my team, and so he's brought this 10 years of experience in the company that we're now building apps for, and he's now a Power Platform expert. So that business context is always, I think, kind of underestimated. And if you bring someone from outside of maybe a Microsoft partner in immediately to just start building an app or a dashboard, there will be a lot of time spent just understanding the area. And I think my
Yeah,
team can leapfrog that and just go straight into design and build, keeping the design lean if we can, and then moving into the build. But yeah, never to be underestimated. I think it's a critical part of successful builds.
absolutely. No, I think it's just so interesting hearing it from an actual user's perspective and hearing how they overcome that. And I think, as you said, it's sort of a good blend of a team and the backgrounds they're coming from. Now, I know you mentioned that obviously you had a couple of great developers in your team. Have you been adopting the low code processes that have been evolving? Are you guys for it, against it?
Well, what processes do you mean here?
So well, just in like, are you embracing low code within the business when you're
Within
creating?
the business? Yeah, absolutely. So maybe taking this on, maybe this is what you're getting at. That like I have an internal team of Power Platform developers. They're getting to the place, they're software developers now. They've come from a renewables background, and that's as I say, that's the magic sauce. But
Yeah,
much broader than that, the SSE Renewables business, there's about 2,000 people in that business unit, and then there's maybe 15 to 20,000 across the whole SSE group. But let's just talk about SSE Renewables, but 2,000 people. Are they embracing the low code paradigm? I think so. I really think so. So a lot of companies will lock it down and say, no, 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 we can't have people out there building apps. That's the role of traditional IT. And I disagree. I have come from a place, and I've joined SSE Renewables in the last 5 years, and I've looked around and I've seen that, yeah, it's probably a problem that all large organizations face. That there's a lot of processes built in spreadsheets. Unfortunately, it's just
yeah,
the way of it, that there is no IT team in the world big enough to solve everyone's problems and to build bespoke apps for everyone, or there's not enough money to buy off the shelf solutions for everyone, because some of the things people are dealing with are a bit smaller scale. So I have seen this real need to empower people to build their own solutions when it has to be appropriate here, when it's the right sort of size and scale. And I am very lucky to be in a business unit, SSE Renewables, where that is supported at quite a high level. And I've been able to build this team, and I've been able to brand it as Citizen Digital, because we're here to support the citizens of SSE Renewables. That's the core mission. So yeah, not only do I have this sort of like senior level buy-in, but I am encouraged to. I mean, it's something I'm really driven by. I run these sessions, I run training sessions, and I make sure there's governance baked in, and I'm being encouraged to do more of that. And when I run these sessions, there's like 100 or 200 people will turn up, and they'll follow along. This isn't just like a sit back, listen to a showcase. People are on Power Automate or Power BI, and they're trying their own little dashboards. So yeah, I do feel lucky to be in an environment, a company that really supports this. A couple of core things here is that we've paid for the licenses for everyone. So everyone in SSE, the
wow,
whole group, has the sort of premium licenses for the likes of Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. Then, as I said, senior buy-in, but then also That's not enough. I think you need a team that have the remit of upskilling the business, like
Yeah,
working alongside them, running training sessions, running the structured sessions, and having like a person to go to when you're stuck with something, or maybe you need permissions, or maybe you just don't know where that setting is because it's that low code world, and that's what we're here to do. So yeah, that's a big part of my role, and I really enjoy that, and I see the difference it's making. I feel like it's an untapped and like under acknowledged area here, that what we're really doing, it's not just the individual success, their value story. It's not just about helping one person learn some new skills and they get more productive. I actually take a much broader, more strategic view here. I think we are moving the dial of the whole organization. I think we are
yeah,
modernizing this IT estate because we're shifting people away from unmanaged spreadsheets that can be emailed around the business, and we're moving people onto like centralized. Maybe it's just a centralized SharePoint list, but maybe it's Dataverse. Maybe it's a secure database with like one instance, and security roles, all that good stuff. And yeah, I just feel like it's that there's a lot of demand for this inside our organization. I'm encouraged to go and do it, and I think there's a big evolution of IT type story that I'm seeing,
yeah.
and I hope we can do a lot more here. I think there's just huge potential.
Absolutely. No, it sounds amazing what you guys are doing, especially for yourself, as you said, sort of letting everyone embrace it and not just a select few people. It sounds like a really collaborative working environment that you're in. And I think when you've got collaboration, that's when things come together, things click, things get done, and that innovation and actually like putting that out to your industry happens.
Yeah.
Um
If I could add
Obviously,
one more thing,
yeah,
I think something I didn't really mention that's core, absolutely key to this is that people by nature are problem solvers. Like I can't speak for all organizations, but I work inside a company where we develop and build wind farms and solar plants and hydro stations. They're all project managers, engineers, finance managers. These people are solving problems, building new projects, moving the dial in the energy space. And if they have a problem and they need to like track something, track some risks maybe, and there is not a system for them, they will do it in a spreadsheet. So that's the sort of world that we live in, that people will build their own things. And if you don't empower them with the best tools and then bake in the right governance, then you're into the world of grey IT and a bit of chaos. So I think this is actually critical to help people, show them the right way of solving some of these, maybe the smaller problems, and empowering them to do it themselves, because then they can go off and add more bells and whistles and tailor their solutions directly to their processes and their team. So yeah, that part I didn't really mention, that like people will try and solve problems with whatever tools they've got, and if you take away things like Power Platform, or more broad than that, maybe like access to Azure cloud tools or whatever it is, they'll solve problems with what they've got, which is typically Excel, email, and Word documents.
yeah, that's very true. No, that's a really important point to touch upon, I think. And I know it's just been mentioned again in what you were saying, but that governance and security.
Mm,
Now, I think it's such an important topic, especially when you're working at such an enterprise level that you guys are. So, how do you ensure that that's all kept super safe and everyone really keeps that in the forefront of their mind when they're testing these apps that
yeah,
they're building, etc.?
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's critical, because otherwise you're just adding to the chaos. So you need to get this part right. So I would say some of the most important parts to take away if someone's new to the Power Platform and are considering like, well, what governance is possible and where to start. The COE tools, the Center of Excellence tools, are fantastic. They give a sort of central admin tool team like a set of tools straight away to just monitor what's going on. So you can, and then
Okay,
also like challenge if people are building things and they don't have the right level of visibility or ownership, they'll get pinged alerts. So there's just a fantastic set of tools created by the Power Cat team, I think it is. So that's
okay,
available. That's a really, really good starting point. But for us, the real sort of uh, the I guess that one of the biggest areas that are biggest mechanisms that we depend on is environment policies. So just just to explain a bit of the context here, again, SSE has these like different business units, and they're separated. Like we're legally separated because we're, there's separation between ourselves that generate electricity, and then this other part of SSE that transmit the electricity down the cable. So we're really not supposed to work together. So we've got like a group team, a group IT team.
Okay.
They set the policy, and then we implement those policies. So the environment policy is absolutely key. If you set an environment policy, then you can decide how and when environments are spun up. The environments are the things that hold the apps and the flows. So we have quite strict rules about what you can and can't do in environments. And if you're into the sort of shared production environment, then there's all these monitoring tools, and we can see what apps are being built, and we can see how many people they're being shared with, so that we can implement other sort of secondary rules like access management. Try not to put 20 plus email addresses onto one app or one Dataverse table. Use security groups. All that good stuff flows from a good environment policy. The other thing that's fundamental that I'll finish on with this, because there's a lot to say, but I know we're running out of time, is that once you've got your environment policy in place, there's certain things you can restrict. So what we've decided to do in SSE Renewables is we don't give the ability to anyone in the business to set security rules. Now, what that really means is that someone can build an app and someone can maybe make some tables, but they can't actually grant access to things. They have to come to my more sort of like citizen centralized team for renewables to have that helping hand. Um,
Okay.
and so we are empowering people to an extent, but we're not giving them all the keys to do everything.
Of
So we
course.
stay involved when it comes to like setting access to things. We make sure there's shared ownership, so that my team can come and help if we need to. We can get straight into the environments and apps and things. And most importantly, we can monitor. We can see with really useful COE dashboards how many apps are out there, how many makers are out there, how many dashboards, and all this good stuff. So those monitoring tools are critical. So yeah, there's a lot to say there. I know it's a very waffly answer, but there's fantastic levels of security available. You just have to have a team that understand them and understand how to use them responsibly, and get good policies in place.
Yeah, you didn't waffle whatsoever. Don't worry. I think everything you're saying is so interesting, and I think I think now that I've spoken to quite a few people from different backgrounds, it's just nice to hear it from different perspectives and how things are sort of altered to different industries and stuff. So it's super useful to know. And I know a lot of people listening, we've had a couple of comments of people singing your praises of, we've
Wow.
got Simon Owen just saying that,
Mm.
he put that you have huge experience in the Power Platform and so much success, a shining light on how you've led SSE
Oh,
Renewables adoption of the Power Platform and support of the folks to build capability and solve
fantastic.
problems. That's a really lovely
Wow.
comment. I
Thank you,
definitely,
Simon. Really
I
appreciate that.
definitely recognise Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, he's with
So
Avanade. He's thinking he's the global
yeah,
COE manager. Yeah, really interesting guy.
yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I probably have spoken to him at some point. But just knowing the thought and the skill set and the type of people that are behind like a successive business, it's nice to know you guys have such a strong unit, so to
Mm.
speak, from what's been said. So one one thing that I sort of want to wrap up on is where do you see Power Platform innovation going in the next
Mm.
couple of years, let's say? Because as you said, it's very quick. Lots of
Yeah.
things change, lots of things speed up. Where
Yeah.
do you see it going?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to stick with like my sort of key message that I've said throughout this, that there's kind of two angles to it. There's the citizen upskilling enablement piece, empowering anyone to build pretty advanced things these days, like full web apps, relational databases with Dataverse, interactive dashboards with Power BI, automations with Power Automate. Like that is so versatile and accessible because it's low code, that will just get easier and easier and easier. So we're already seeing natural language. We can just type, here's what I want, and it builds not just an app and the dash and the tables behind it all, but also sets out the plan. This the Power Apps plan tool is fantastic. So it's getting easier and easier to build solutions. So I
Yeah,
think I think that will simplify, and they'll continue to iterate and add new features onto all these tools. So better and better. I mean, still today, if you try and do some fairly basic things, it gets a bit frustrating because you're like, why isn't there just a tool for that? There's so many of us all trying to do the same thing. It shouldn't there just be an action for that? And that's what will happen. And if
Yeah.
Microsoft keep getting that feedback, that will just get easier and better and better and better. So that's a huge story. The other thing I'm seeing is these enterprise scale apps. I think we'll see a sort of an acceptance of those. That's what I've seen within SSE. That for a while
Okay.
it was felt like, oh no, Power Apps is just for small things. That's just for like, I don't know, tracking your team activity or something. But we are doing something completely different with Power Platform, the model driven apps for the performance, and the Canvas apps for the sort of user experience, and people love it. People really love it. They're coming at us asking us more. They're asking for more and more and more. So I think in terms of evolution, I think we'll see that being just more accepted across larger organizations, and then there'll be more drive for partners and contractors in that space. And yeah, I'm quite excited about some of the new features that are coming. Like, we constantly see third-party access as a blocker. So Power Pages is here now, and it's okay, but it's kind of like you're designing a SharePoint list that points at a Dataverse
Yeah.
table, which is very useful, but it's quite different from Power Apps. I think they'll start to merge a little bit. Um,
Okay.
and of course, yeah, there's Copilot everywhere, so that will just be interesting to see how that gets embedded into all these different products. It's already happening. It's happening in front of our eyes.
It is.
But I think the big story will just be the proliferation of this stuff across, like, individual citizens doing their own thing, but these bigger solutions being accepted, and traditional IT teams having to have Power Platform architects and developers as part of the core. So you'll have like your cloud engineering, your data and AI, and then something like a Power Platform or low code team.
Absolutely. No, I think you're the first person that's touched upon the angle of like the citizen side and empowering people to keep using tech and get on board with all the new things. So I think that's a really lovely point to add. And obviously everyone's got different views on where the tech's going to go. No one knows. All we know is it's
Mm,
evolving very quickly. But I'm excited to see what positive impact it can have on these industries.
yep.
Um, but I don't know whether you've ever got to the end of a podcast, but at the end of every podcast, before we say our goodbye, I always ask the final question, which is, if you were not a citizen digital manager at
hmm
SSE Renewables and you could not have a job in IT,
hmm
what would your dream job be? What would you be doing?
I honestly think that's quite easy to answer. Sorry, like,
Okay.
what I'm seeing is that these tools are so accessible. I would The reason I'm really taken by the Power Platform, and the reason I've kind of committed to this journey over the last 5 years, is the impact it has. It's
Yeah.
not really the innovation, it's the impact, because anyone can use it. It's so accessible. You can just get started anytime,
Yeah.
and it's so versatile. Everyone will find some value in it, whether it's an automation or a little dashboard or an app. So like, if I wasn't in a core IT role, or like that is what I'm doing. I mean, I'm sort of bringing that traditional IT stuff to a business. I I I don't know if it just isn't ambitious enough, but I think there's certain areas I'm really committed to the renewables space. I see this as
Yeah.
one of the biggest stories of our time, and I know I've not really talked too much about renewables on this podcast, but it's unbelievable what society's trying to achieve over the next 10 years, and then on to 2050 to hit the net zero targets. So I would stay in the renewable space,
Okay.
and I would like to continue empowering people, but maybe just do it within a team. Like, take a team on that journey. Right now, I'm doing it for a whole business unit.
Yeah.
But if I had to do something else without that sort of centralized role, I would soul search a little bit, find the area within renewables that really speaks to me, and commit to that, and work with them to completely transform their processes, upskill anyone in that team. I don't know if that's sufficiently different from what I currently do today, but I would maybe just flip more towards the renewables context stuff with all of this
Yeah.
unbelievable experience I'm seeing of what's possible with low code tools.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the answer. Um, well, honestly, I think we could probably talk for hours about the different areas within your sector and what you're doing. And I think, as I said before, it's just nice to hear a different opinion and a different view. And I really like that you're very people orientated. I love that about what you're currently doing. Um, but what unfortunately we can't talk forever. I know we've both got jobs to get back to, but thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm super excited to keep up with what you and the business are doing. And yeah, if anyone's watching, any further questions, drop them in the comments and we'll get back to them. Drop Conaill a follow as well, just to keep up with what he's doing. And yeah, we'll be back next week.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. It's lovely. It's been lovely to meet you, and this has
Yeah,
actually been fun. I was very nervous, but yeah,
good.
really enjoyed this.
I
Thanks for the
told
opportunity
you.
for me to tell the story of SSE Renewables and what we're trying to achieve with the power platform. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. No worries. See you later, everyone.
Thank you.